Welcome to the Thomas More University Financial Aid Office web series of videos. In this video, we're going to be looking at some common FAFSA issues and also doing some FAFSA troubleshooting. The most common issue we see is, of course, having trouble logging in, and this could be at the student level or the parent level if a student is dependent and requires a parent signature as well. So first thing is when you're setting up the FSA ID, which is your username and password, if you're doing it for both student and the parent, you can't use any of the same identifying information between those two individuals. So your FSA ID is tied to a unique social security number, but so is an email address, the username, of course your name, as well as a date of birth. If any of those pieces of information overlap between two individuals, you are guaranteed to have trouble logging in. So the best way to avoid that is, of course, when you're setting up your FSA ID, is to avoid that altogether. Don't even use the same email address to link to the account. That will cause issues as well. Once you've already created your FSA ID, and if you have trouble, go to the website fsaid.ed.gov. and there's an option there to manage your FSA ID. That way you can check the information that you have on your FSA ID and be able to straighten it out there. Another common issue we have is choosing the correct year on the FAFSA. Most of the year there are actually two FAFSAs that are open at the same time. So if you think about the timing, the new FAFSA opens up on October 1st each year, but that's also right in the middle of the previous award year. So the previous year's FAFSA is still available most of the time. So when you log on to the FAFSA, you're going to see two different FAFSAs. Make sure you're clicking on the correct one and filling out the appropriate year FAFSA. Next issue we see a lot is undergraduate versus graduate degree. So of course we have both degree programs here at Thomas More University. Of course, if you're an undergraduate, you want to check as such, vice versa for graduate programs. The FAFSA asks you specifically if you've completed your first bachelor's degree prior to beginning the next school year. And that's how they determine if you are an undergraduate versus a graduate student. So of course, if you're still working on your undergraduate degree, you'll want to say no, that you've not completed your first bachelor's degree. If you are a graduate student, you want to check yes, you have completed your first bachelor's degree. Similar to the last issue, another common issue we have is students' degree or certificate program. So there's a specific question on the FAFSA that asks what degree or certificate program that you're working on, and there's about 8 or 9 different options there. There's only about 2 that would apply to most students here at Thomas More University. Most students here are working on either your first bachelor's degree or a master's degree. We currently do not offer any certificate programs that are federal financial aid eligible, so be sure to avoid that option altogether. The importance of this question is certain state grants and loans as well as federal financial aid. Take a look at whether you're in a degree or certificate program, and you might disqualify yourself if you answer this question incorrectly. So be sure to read that question carefully and answer it accurately. Next issue is dependency status. So generally any student under the age of 24 is considered to be a dependent student on the FAFSA. And as such, they're required to have a parent information on the FAFSA with them, unless certain criteria are met. So if a student is in the military, or if the student is married, or if the student is in a graduate program, those are all common ways to get around the age of 24 requirement. In those situations, a student can become independent and not have their parents' information on the FAFSA. A common issue we have specifically here, though, is legal guardianship. One of the questions will ask if you're in a legal guardianship or if you're an emancipated minor. Legal guardianship does not refer to your parents. This is a court-ordered status. Same with emancipated minor. That is a court-ordered status and is not typical of our dependent students here at Thomas More. Another option, this isn't necessarily an issue, but one that we recommend for students and parents to use, is the data retrieval tool on the FAFSA. This allows users to import their tax data from the IRS into the FAFSA. And doing this greatly reduces the likelihood of any mistakes or errors in the future. Sometimes an applicant gets all the way to the end of the FAFSA and they submit their FAFSA without having signed it. That is a common error that we see as well, is the signature issue. So of course all applicants must sign the FAFSA, and of course the best way to do that is electronically while you're on the website for the FAFSA. Now you have to sign the FAFSA electronically using the FSA ID that you use to log into the FAFSA. That is sufficient for your electronic signature. Remember that for dependent students, again generally under the age of 24, students are dependent, those students are required to have a parent signature on the FAFSA as well. So a lot of times we see a student has signed the FAFSA but not a parent, and it's not considered a valid FAFSA. We're not allowed to award any financial aid until all signature requirements are met. Finally, if you need to correct a FAFSA, you are allowed to do that. However, you need to re-sign and resubmit that correction on the FAFSA. What happens when you make a correction on the FAFSA is it essentially redoes the FAFSA. It generates a brand new transaction of your FAFSA, and in that case you must re-sign that transaction, and you also must resubmit the FAFSA as well. We get a lot of phone calls and emails from students and parents alike that say that they've corrected their FAFSA many weeks or even months ago, but it has not been received at Thomas More yet. And a lot of times we find the issue is that the correction has been made. The student may have even signed the correction on the FAFSA, but they simply forgot to resubmit that FAFSA. And it's essentially just sitting there on the website and has not gone anywhere. So you would just need to log back into the FAFSA and submit that new correction to us so that we can receive it. This concludes our Troubleshooting the FAFSA video. Good luck with your FAFSA filing, and if you do have any issues that's not covered in this video, please do contact us either by email or phone.